Tracy Schmidt, who is a holistic health coach and a possibilitarian. And Tracy and I were connected. I was thinking about it like yesterday. It's been almost 2 years now, I think. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yes.
we've been
Yes.
accountability partners for almost two. Yeah, exactly. Because I think it started in February. The program started in February, Manifestation Babe,
Yeah.
her program. And so we've just been accountability partners since then. So basically, every single week, with the exception of a few patches there where I was working nights, like every week, we've basically kept in touch for 2 years and live on opposite sides of the world, never met. And I just love those kinds of friendships that grow out of, people can say what they want about the internet and social media, but like, I feel like our friendship is proof that there's so much beauty in that. So I want to set the foundation first because I know we're going to dig into like quite a few things and who knows where it goes because you and I are always exploring so many different things. But let's set the foundation with your astrology and your human design. And then I'll hand the floor to you and you can introduce yourself, tell your story, and then kind of just, yeah, what got you to where you're at today.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Yeah, no, and I also love, like, I was just telling someone else this, like, with accountability partners, you don't know, like, are you going to really connect with them?
Mm-hmm.
Some people are committed to it, some people aren't,
Yeah.
but I've been super fortunate, like you with Manifestation Babe. And then from another program, I've had an accountability partner for like 7.5 years,
Mm-hmm.
like every week.
Yeah.
And she's even brought her husband into the mix.
Oh, I love that.
So it's really fun, but it's when it's
Yeah.
good, it's really good.
It is. Well, and usually, times that I've had accountability partners for a specific program or time frame that's kind of just lasted for that and then it
Mm,
falls off. But like you and
yeah,
I have just every single week, you know,
yeah,
we're there at some point during the
it's
week.
good.
So,
It's good.
yeah. So we'll start with your human design and then if you want to give your big three in astrology, set the foundation
Okay.
there.
So I am a 4/6 manifesting generator, sacral manifesting
Mm-hmm.
generator, which is no surprise in my world. And I am a Capricorn sun, a Scorpio moon, and a Gemini rising.
Mm-hmm. And your chart is fascinating. I'm always looking at it every single time we talk because you just have a lot of interesting polarities or
Mm,
what's the word I'm looking for? Like juxtapositions.
yeah,
Where you kind of hold like both and in a lot of places in your chart. And I find that really fascinating. So
yeah,
yeah.
it's fun.
Yeah. And then if you want to share just as much or as little as you like about your story, and then we could dive
Oh,
in.
sure, sure. Um, I've been working on summarizing a quick story because I
It's
love one of
it's
my
hard.
strengths is storytelling.
Yeah.
Like I love storytelling, but I also love listening and hearing other people's stories, which is why, yeah, people person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I would say just quickly going back, I did all the things you should be doing when I was younger, college, you know, got the corporate job, and then it just slowly was sinking in like, this is okay, but it's not satisfying. It's not lighting me up. I'm not connected. And then I had this little vision of me as like a grandma, when I'm like in my 20s. And I was like married, grandkids, but I'm just like, what? This is not my life. No, 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 no. I'm still hoping for grandkids, which I think will happen. Um, and so I quit my corporate job and I moved to Japan because I had never been to Asia and I had never really lived overseas. I'd spent extended times in Europe, but I don't really call that living. Like I was there for 2+ years, working, living. And that was the game changer of like just doing that thing that scared the crap out of me, quitting the job, going to a country I'd never been to. I didn't know anyone. I didn't have a job. It was nothing. And I just put my faith in it's going to be fine. It's going to all work out. And from there, things just keep getting better and better because I know I can do these scary things and somehow it's going to work out. And it always kind of has. But I didn't realize in the moment how empowering that big decision was. But I've seen it, when I find myself in a position where things aren't great, I do not hesitate like I would have before. I mean, there's always the pause, there's always a time frame, but I feel like I do it with more confidence and certainly faster because I tend to run a little bit slow with big decisions. Um, and uh, and so here I am. It started also with that move, which was 31 years ago.
Mm.
doing it before people were doing it before the internet. Um, that also was the beginning of my personal growth journey. So it's been in process for a very long time, but I am just like you, geeking out on learning new things and really, and I think you might agree, like digging into the self, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. This is where the magic is. And when we have all of these things more aligned, we just have more flow and things are easier. Not
Yeah.
always easy, but easier.
Hmm.
So I started by becoming a massage therapist on a professional realm and then a holistic health coach. And then I started working with essential oils and with the Healy, like bioresonance or, frequency energy. And it's just always adding, coaching program here, this, there, and there's just yumminess. And then my most recent and bigger thing was the Clifton Strengths coaching. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. We're definitely going to get into that. Are you okay
yeah.
with me sharing bits and pieces of your chart as we go?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm an open
Yeah.
book.
Just wanted to make sure. You never know.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
your midheaven, which is the point in your
Mhm.
chart that has to do with career, legacy, public persona, is actually in your ninth house. So for you,
Mhm.
for traveling, that sort of being, a huge piece of like what you do makes so much sense,
Mm,
right? Traveling,
yeah,
education, philosophy, religion, spirituality,
yeah,
things like that, right? It's just like it fits so perfectly in that arena. So I love that.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, there's so much, right, in my chart,
Hmm.
human design,
Yeah.
astrology, strengths, gene keys, like it's
Hmm.
just all there.
It's
And I
all
just
there.
love, and you and I have geeked out, like, and we did a trade
Hmm.
where Rochelle was doing the human design astrology for me and gene keys, and I was doing strengths for her. And we just kept seeing overlap, overlap,
Yeah.
overlap. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't
It
matter.
was amazing.
It's all there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess for people who maybe aren't familiar with the strengths, because if they're listening to
Mm,
this podcast, if
yeah.
this is the first podcast they've listened to, maybe they're new to human design and astrology. There are
Right.
over 200 episodes that basically relate to it. But for anyone that maybe doesn't know what strengths was, because I hadn't heard of it before
Right.
we started talking about it. And it is
Right.
fascinating. Like, as we were going through mine, I was just like mind blown because so much of it, I mean, it's just like to a T, like who I am. And I often think of definitely my top one, which was connection,
Yeah.
right? It was connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking of like a bigger word for it, but yeah, connection. Like every time we would go through it, it was so fascinating. Like you said, there were so many different parallels between
Yeah.
my specific chart, and then as I was describing your human design chart and your astrology, you are relating it to your strength. So it's
Yeah.
so fascinating.
Yeah. 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 So Clifton Strengths actually falls under, for any Americans listening, it's under Gallup. That's the parent company. And this guy, whatever his name is, Mr. Clifton, did this huge study of like 2 million people. And in this, they discovered 34 strengths. And so the difference between human design, astrology, gene keys is that's all just based on your birthplace, date, time. Whereas this is actually a subjective assessment you're completing. And I even learned when I first got my strengths, I didn't wasn't working with someone. So I read it and I'm like, okay, whatever. I think that's kind of just like astrology and human design. You're like, oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's me, that's not me. I don't really understand this. And then you kind of forget about it. But a few years after I did my chart, I did this deep dive. And I would say the guy that I studied with, his name is Eddie Villa. He studied with Gallup. But Gallup, it's actually made for like corporate like management. So I know corporate people who have their strengths report, but they only have the top 5. And there are 34 strengths. And if you get the whole report, you see everything. And what first lit me up about it is that it's so unique, right? Like there is literally no one else in the world who has the same top 7 strengths in the same order. Like no one. And I'm like, 'cause I don't know. I always heard like, oh, you're so special, you're different, you're unique. And especially when you start doing personal growth work, you hear it, you hear it, you hear it. And this is like the visual proof of it, and then leaning in and learning about those strengths and actually living into them. That's when they become superpower strengths, when you're using them intentionally, you
Mm-hmm.
know. and with awareness. So
Yeah.
in a nutshell, that's
Yeah.
strengths.
Well, and I like it too because each one has what you call the basement, right? The
Yeah,
so it's kind of like higher expression and lower expression of it. And
exactly.
even for me, like that connection where I immediately was like, oh, just like connecting with people, but it's like bigger than that, right? It's like it's
Right.
seeing everything as being connected in some way. And that's very six
Yes.
line. My profile is a six
Yeah.
three. So it is
Yeah.
seeing from that perspective, right? Of like
Yeah.
I do see how everything is connected, and even,
Yeah.
when we talk about like being individual and being unique, it's like, yes, we are. And also we're all the same,
Yes.
you know?
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. Like separate but the same,
Yeah.
all in one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is also so exciting, you know.
Yeah. Can you also describe like how, because I know there's like your top five, but then there's also different like your top five, your bottom, and then in the middle, like just
Yeah.
how they show up for you. Because I
Yeah.
know there's a interesting, not hierarchy, but there's an interesting way to like read all of that. That was not just
Right.
like one through
Right.
34.
Right, right. And so like what I focus on when I work with people is first we focus on the top 10 and really just like so they can understand it and see how because we each embody the strength differently. Like I remember when I first got my report, I understood all of them like, oh my God, that's me. Oh my number one. I'm like, what? How is this my number one? Like I couldn't understand it. And then I slowly got to it, especially when I started working with someone of like, oh, I see how this shows up in my life. I'm just not the typical person because they're often like super perfectionists. And I'm the queen of like, let's just wing it, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah.
But it took me a while. Like I do like somebody was like, oh, you prefer quality over quantity. Like I made that statement and they're like, that's part of your number one. And I'm like, oh, well, that's easy. That's been like, I don't know, since I was probably in college, I could identify that. And so, yeah, we focus on like understanding the top 10 and seeing how they embody it. And then we also look at the bottom five because that's really like your top 10 is where you're in alignment. It's where you're energized. Things are good when you're living there.
Hmm.
But if you're living in any of your bottom five, it's going to be in the basement. It's not going to be in the balcony, right? The higher expression. And it's really important to know. You want to make sure. Like I realized one of my bottom five, I'm like, I've been hanging out there a little bit. No wonder things haven't been going so well,
Hmm.
right? But it's also like not looking at whether you're able to do something or not. It's more embodying how you do it. So looking at like, I don't even remember what strength it was that I was embodying in my bottom five, but I had to then look at, okay, how can I do this kind of task or this thing using my top 10? And so it's kind of fun because you get to play
Hmm.
with it, and say like, okay, I understand. I want to embody this concept, this strength, but I don't want to utilize the strength. And you find your own unique way to do it.
Hmm.
And then we do also check in with like the 11 to 15, because sometimes there's some strengths in there that are super powerful. But the mid range, kind of like it could be 14 to maybe 22 or somewhere around that general area. They're usually just kind of neutral. Like
Hmm.
they don't light you up, they don't suck your energy. They're just kind of there. They're not so we don't spend time there, you know.
Hmm.
But it's just so fun to play
Yeah.
with.
Yeah. And none of them are like bad. I'm like air quoting it, right? It's
No,
it's just like whether you embody these more than some of the other ones, basically.
right, right. It's more, like it would be more challenging for you if you're living in the basement,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Things you're gonna feel better and do more and be more effective, most likely if you're living in the balcony, you know. But it's
Hmm.
like everything, right? They're not good or bad. It's not right or wrong, but it's trying to live into the highest expression of yourself,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. So if you're looking from like a business perspective or like as an entrepreneur or anything like that, you're really focusing and trying to like lean into those top like five or 10.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I
Hmm.
changed how I work after I
Hmm.
really understood my strengths and I knew this, like I could describe this to people. I used to say before to like close family and friends, like, I know I'm really great at, excuse me, they're cooking something a little spicy in there in the kitchen. I know I'm great at like ideas. Like, how could I share information? How can I, put more out? I'll come up with new ideas. I'm great at ideas. And I feel like I'm quite good at connecting and teaching and mentoring and coaching, but it's every detail in the middle, not so great. And I
Mm-hmm.
knew this about myself, but then I feel like for me, understanding my strengths where I have zero executing strengths in my top 10. And I remember telling my mom this, and she's like, well, of course you don't. Like, it's not rocket science, but for me, it almost like gave me permission to be like, you don't have to try to do all those jobs that are part of being self-employed, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
don't have a team. I have a virtual assistant I work with sometimes, but like that's how I got a website up. I
Mm-hmm.
hired a virtual assistant and it got done. Now
Yeah.
I know I'm smart. I know I'm capable. I know I'm competent. I know I could figure it out, but it would suck the life out of me and probably take me 20 years to do. Like I
Mm-hmm.
never even tried it because
Yeah.
it's not in my wheelhouse,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Well, and a lot of it, so futuristic is your top, right?
Yes,
Is it number?
it's my number 7 or 8. Eight, I
Okay.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm just looking from like, a business lens where we're
Mm,
talking about, everything you're describing, like doing things differently or being innovative and
yeah.
things like that. And you have Aquarius in your midheaven, in
Yeah.
the ninth house, but it's very much about that innovation, right? That like doing things a little bit
Yeah.
differently, that it wouldn't necessarily be like attention to detail and that stuff because it is an air sign. So it's going to be
Right.
better at the people things, right? At like
Yeah.
being social and having the ideas. And so like
Yeah.
grounding that in, and then its ruler, like we were just talking about, is conjunct Pluto and Mars in Virgo. So there's going to be a little bit of
Yeah.
difficulties, I guess, or challenge with that
Yeah.
aspect of it as well. But like this is what we were every time we were talking about it, I'm like,
Yeah.
astrology, human design. It's so interesting
I
because you can just like see as you're speaking, all these like keywords are coming out to me. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
the Aquarius midheaven, like 100%. It's like you're
Yeah.
embodying it, with or without realizing it. And I love
Well,
that when people
yeah.
just are, like it blows my mind. It's beautiful.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's fun, and I also find like whether it's strengths, human design, astrology, like just the quest to like know the self and get
Mhm.
back to our roots because we're
Yeah.
so busy being unaware most of the time and just living through the programming that we've received. And I do see that starting to shift more and more now. Like to me, this is like the ultimate like fun game of just like
Mhm.
exploring. I'll do like any kind of personal, assessment of like who you are, whether it's numerology or the Enneagram or, there's so many different things. Somebody just introduced me to something else a couple of weeks ago. I'd never heard of it before. I don't even remember the name of it, but I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll check it out. Like it's it's so empowering,
It really is. Like, I feel like that exploration of self, like, it's interesting to think about a time when I was in my 20s where I had no interest in even who I was, getting to know myself. I didn't even like myself. I was just trying to like get through the day and get to the next thing. And now it's so exciting to like peel back new layers and
Yeah.
explore new things. And it's like I'll find a new pattern and I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to work through it now. Like I can see it. It's just so interesting, going from one extreme to the other. But I also do think that a lot of times we have to go through the lows in order to
Oh yeah.
want to discover ourselves so deeply. And your sun
Yeah.
is in the eighth house, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yes.
So there's
Yes,
that
it is.
natural depth to who you
Yeah.
are that you want to explore. I mean, that's
Yeah.
inevitable. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's I like when we first started, when you mentioned it, because like I said, I'd never heard of it before, but I'm like, it's so
Yeah.
interesting. And then there are three different categories for the strengths, right?
There's four.
Four.
And
Okay.
and this is where there's kind of a little more generalization. And so the way that I learned it from Eddie, because I describe him as like the Jedi warrior of strengths. Like he has taken it out of the more corporate, mainframe eye, and he's just looking at like people connecting. It doesn't matter who you are, what your labels and roles are in this life. Everyone can benefit from this. And so we really look at like, so we look at your top 10 and any of the categories that you have three or more of in that top 10, we consider it like a dominant domain. So there is strategic thinking, those people like to think, create, and learn. Maybe all three of those, maybe just one of those things, but they like to spend a lot of time. They spend a lot of time in their heads, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
also see this as one of my challenge. I have so much going on up here, but
Mm-hmm.
getting it out into the world can be a challenge.
Yeah.
And
I
then we
have
have
half of
relationships.
that, right? I'm a
Yes,
mix between
so do I.
strategic and okay.
Yeah, I think you and I are both, right? Strategic thinking and relationship building.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that
I
sounds
think
good.
so. I was going to pull up your chart before this and I forgot to. And then relationship building, and it's all about connecting with the right people,
Mm-hmm.
whoever those right people are for you. It could be there's certain right people at work, certain right people in your personal life, certain right people in whatever, a group, an organization, but whoever those people are to you in that moment can always change.
Mm-hmm.
The next is influencing, and that's helping people move forward. And I always say, like, I kind of have a minor in that because two of my top 10 are influencing, but then also two of my other, I think one is strategic thinking and one is relationship building. They have a lot of influencing behind them, even though they're
Mm-hmm.
not officially influencing strengths. And then the last one, which I have zero of in my top 10, is the executing. And that's really an
I think I don't have any
energy.
of that either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think you do either.
Mm-mm.
That's about getting things done what you would decide as the right way. Like, I'm just like, do it your way, and that's my even my work as a health coach. Like, if somebody comes up to me and is like, oh, just tell me what to do. I'm like, I'm not the person for you because
Mm-hmm.
only you can figure that out. I can give you tips or suggestions or teach you about something that you might not know in the health world in your quest to be healthier, but only you can decide how far you want to go. What's the best way to implement it, right? And we've learned, like, it's very clear from strengths, from astrology, from human design, like, it leads the way. It
Mm-hmm.
shows you preferences, and those are little idiosyncrasies and quirks. They're all there.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just pulling mine up because I was trying to
Ah,
remember what it was. But yeah, I am
yeah,
strategic thinking and relationship building. And
yeah,
it's so interesting, for you, you say relationship building, and I think that fourth line because it's so I
yeah,
always I forget that you're a four. I always think you're a two
yeah.
four. So they're so
Okay.
sociable, right? But you are a 4 6, which also makes
Yeah,
sense. But yeah, that
yeah.
relationship building is very fourth line. And it's interesting if, for my human design, because I'm a 6 3, which is a little bit weird. Like I I wouldn't say I'm the most sociable person, but I mean,
Mm.
I value deep connection. And I think that's why it's challenging for me to
Yeah,
be so social because a lot of times it's very superficial. It's about the weather. And I'm like, if
right.
you're trying to pull like just conversation starters out of me, I'm
Yeah,
like glossed over out of the room. I can't do it. So I
forget
think
it.
that's why that's harder for me. But I have more fourth lines in my chart than anything else, which is really
Yeah,
interesting. So there is this part of me that I think really values that. And when I
yeah,
meet people who are like you, I in
yeah.
anyone who's got a fourth line, I love fourth lines because then I think when I'm in a
Ah,
situation or if we were actually going somewhere in a room,
mhm.
like I think I would be able to draw on your energy, right?
Right,
And it's
right.
beautiful. And so I feel
Yeah,
like I almost need the support of fourth lines to
yeah,
bring that out of me.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it is a very, so when I first heard that, I was like, relationship building, I don't know, but it's like, but that's also what I'm doing with the podcast. You know what I mean? Like that's
Right,
what I'm doing.
right.
And so
Well,
it does make sense.
and relationship building does not need to equate to being extroverted,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just pulled up your chart too. Like, I forget your number 5 strength is relator.
Mm.
And relator is like, and what I've learned with Eddie, 5 is like your foundational strength. Like, this is like the core of your strengths. And when
Mm-hmm.
you're connected and aligned with your 5, your top 10 are going to be more aligned as well. And if your 5 is off, then everything else might be a little bit off. It's like
Mm-hmm.
so powerful. And it's relator. And relator is an introverted people connecting strength. It's having a small core group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And those people usually prefer like one-on-one connections, no small talk. Like, no, no, no. My daughter it's her number 2 strength. And of
Yeah.
course it is. Like, she and I are totally opposite. I'm the blah,
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah. And she's just like, are you what's the point of your story?
Yeah. Yeah. You know what's funny
Get to
about
the
that too
point.
is though, I feel like my group, I guess you would say, or my
Mm,
circle is pretty small, but within
yeah.
that circle, I would say at least, half, if not more, are people who are so well resourced. It's
Mm,
wild. So it's like in that
yeah.
sense, like I do have that. I mean, if you're looking at relationship and like knowing who, like if somebody
Yeah.
needed something, they called me, I might not be able to provide it, but I know the person that will. So
Right.
that I feel like
I love
resonates
that.
well to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And every
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
that is like that in my group is a fourth line,
Mhm.
of course, is either a 2-4, 4-6, where I'm like, I know that you have somebody in your phone that knows somebody. But
Yeah.
it's like I feel like it's being able to use those, right? When you really need
Yeah. Yeah. Like you don't have to be that. You
it.
only have to be yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can only do it your way,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And that's the
But it
beautiful
is,
thing about all of this, right? Is that
yeah.
I feel like all of these tools, it just gives you, doing that self exploration gives you that power and like
Yeah.
wanting to then let go of all the societal bullshit and just be like, oh no,
Yeah.
I don't have to do it that way. I don't
No,
have to be
this is
this.
me.
Yeah. Because I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of our resistance and a lot of our shadows come from trying to fit in a box that we don't fit in.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
Though the other thing I was just thinking about is like somebody like you and I, we've been doing the work where, our charts are super aligned with us. But if
Mm-hmm.
someone is maybe not as aware or maybe going through a harder time, they might, and I've seen this with a couple of clients, their report doesn't feel super aligned. Like one person I knew super well, the other one not as well, but just through our coaching and conversation, it came up. And what we figured out, like with the first person, is they had like 7 relationship building strengths, which I've never had anyone like with one of 7. I've had
Mm-hmm.
6, but not. And so I'm like, wow. But then what we realized is she was actually in a place of like not a good marriage. And so
Yeah.
really her answers weren't the reality of her situation, but they were more of what she was wanting or
Yeah.
needing.
Yeah.
And so we've already talked about like, okay, she's now got a divorce. And we're like, let's give it like a year or two. And it would be really fascinating to retake the strengths because it's not something that's usually recommended that you would need
Mm.
to retake it. But if you go through something really big, really life changing, that is really switching up your whatever perspective, the way you operate in the world,
Mm-hmm.
it could be really interesting. And so I've heard of a couple of people, I don't know them personally, but like I've heard on a podcast or in a training, like they retook the test after a huge life experience. And their next chart or results were felt much more in alignment.
Mm.
But just by ending a non-healthy relationship, they started getting
Yeah.
in more alignment. So it's really interesting. But that first person, I believe, she became more aware through her strengths assessment and coaching.
Mm.
And
Which makes
that
sense.
kind of woke her up to
Yeah.
oh, this isn't okay anymore,
Mm.
and like
Yeah.
really stood up. I think it also empowered her to take those next steps and do that really, really hard thing,
Mm-hmm.
you
And you
know?
said she had like most of her top 10 was relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
7.
Well, and it would make sense that her primary relationship was broken, right? And it would
Yeah.
be hard to like
Yeah.
see that as a
Exactly.
strength for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very interesting.
So it's just always fascinating.
Yeah. It really is. It's amazing. So, where I always forget the name of the place where you live. I know it's like,
Well, yeah, you don't need to remember it. So I live in Indonesia,
mm,
and when my daughter and I first moved here, we lived in Bali for a couple of years. But then we moved so now we're like 2 islands east of Bali. The island is called Sumbawa.
mm,
So it's
okay.
most people don't know it,
Okay.
like
I know you've
it's
said the name to me a lot
yeah,
but I was like just thinking I was like I forgot what it's called.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you've
yeah,
been
yeah.
international basically since you were 20 and decided to move to Japan.
Well, it's been back and forth. Like probably with that move, I probably spent about 3 years in Asia, 3 years in Central and South America. But then I went back to the US and had my daughter. And I'm originally from the Chicago area. So I went back to Chicago And then when she was like a year and a half, we moved to Portland, Oregon, which is much more aligned at
Hmm.
that time. Now it's a little bit of a hot mess, but
Yeah.
it was a great, great place to raise her. And then when she was 15, we came here, which was 8 years ago. Last week was our 8 year
Wow.
anniversary
Wow.
of being in Indo.
That's a long
Yeah.
time.
So,
Hmm.
yeah.
What do you feel like you've learned there?
Oh my gosh. I can say, I was pretty spiritual and connected before we moved here because that was already decades in the making, you know, but accelerated like just deeper, deeper practices, deeper learning, more awareness. And this place, so many energy portals here. Like the lessons come hard and fast here.
Hmm.
And it either like you can either manage it and work with it, or it literally just spits people out and they don't stay long
Hmm.
and they leave. And
Yeah.
it's not easy because it is remote. Like I'm right now in one of two restaurants that are really just restaurants. I mean, there's
Yeah.
a lot of like local places, but they're not so healthy. So I don't go there so often. Um, and it's challenging, like for somebody from me, like who's so extroverted.
Hmm.
I, you know, that's why I'm always out and I always talk to
Yeah.
people that I meet at the restaurants. And, my daughter's mortified. She'd be like, when she was younger, don't make eye contact. There's somebody new coming in. Stop. Don't make eye contact. And I'm just like,
That's
ah.
funny. Yeah. I feel like we've talked about too the parallels between
Yeah.
like your daughter and mine, just in like because your
Yeah.
daughter's a 1-3, my daughter's a 1-3, and my son
Yeah.
is the one that never met a stranger. He will talk to anybody, and she's like, "Oh my god,
Yes.
he's going over there. Oh my god." Like it's
That
okay.
was me.
Yeah.
My mom used to worry about me when I was little.
Really?
I'd be greeting people
Oh yeah.
everywhere. And she
Yeah.
was trying to teach me stranger danger, and I wasn't
That
buying it.
is a real like my son one day I
Yeah.
was sitting outside my parents' house and this father and son just rode by on bikes. My son chases them. Is like, where are you guys going? Never met these people in his life. And they're like to the park. He's like, can I come? And the father was like, isn't that your mom? Like I told him, like, you can't do that. You didn't even know those people. He's like, well, I know
Well,
them
and now,
now. I'm like,
yeah,
well, I
like
know, but
what a different world we live in now than when
yeah.
I was a child,
Mm.
like,
Well,
yeah,
it's like one of those things too, where it's such a beautiful quality to have. And it's like
yeah,
you don't want to break them of that,
right.
but also like you have to be aware of the world that we do live in. Like
Yeah.
you can't, I've made jokes before where I'm just like, he's like, I would never go with a stranger. I'm like, until they offer you candy. I mean,
They're riding their bike by and
yeah,
going to the park.
exactly, exactly. But he's like so glued to my hip that I know, like,
Yeah,
he would yell my name, and he's very, very extroverted. He's not shy, right? So I know,
right.
like, he would put up a fight, like, he would be loud, like,
Oh, yeah.
God forbid. I don't even want to like think about that, but it's like
Yeah.
I feel like that does serve him well, and
Yeah.
it's been, a mixture of just really aligning, trying to raise him according to human design. And I made a post earlier today.
Yeah.
It's so amazing when you look at children who of course he has conditioning,
Yeah.
everybody does, and I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
not the perfect parent, nobody is,
No.
but it's like even little things as far as just like the way that he bless you, like the way that he eats,
Yeah.
I have never like tried to control that, and he's touch
Yeah.
cognition, so I've never been like pick up a fork, eat with your hands, and it's just amazing to watch how much like they can align to the way that
Yeah.
they're supposed to consume food and consume information and sleep and like all these things. It really is like fascinating to see, and that's why sometimes if people don't believe in these systems, it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you don't have to, but I see it. I
Right.
see you embody that. I see it
Yeah.
manifested and you don't even know. And
Yeah.
it's amazing.
It's interesting because I also have touch,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm thinking like my parents would have been like, no, you need to use a
Mm-hmm.
fork and a
Mm-hmm.
knife. Like you need to. But once I started, especially living in Asia, like where a lot of places you eat with your
Yeah, it's more
hands, like
acceptable.
India,
Mm-hmm.
here you eat with your
Mm-hmm.
hands traditionally.
Yeah.
And like I love living in Japan, like I love chopsticks. So I always had from traveling my favorite ways to eat with my hands, then with chopsticks, and then silverware. Like that's my
Yeah.
bottom,
Yeah. But
like
chopsticks are also, they have like a texture to them that like a fork
right,
doesn't. Because my son,
right.
he's the same. He loves chopsticks. I feel like that would
Ah,
be his order: hands, chopsticks, and
yeah,
like he'll eat the most random things. If there's a chopsticks in front of him, like he's had that mastered for years. People are amazed. They're like,
yeah,
he can use those. Like he literally just picked them up when he was like 3 and just like started using them.
yeah.
So I think that is such a touch thing. And also touch cognition people are just very affectionate too. Like he will
Yes.
always be on me or kissing me or like touch, or and when we go into
Touchy
stores,
feely.
yeah,
Yeah.
like very much like, and when we go into stores, I have to tell him, I'm like, look with your eyes. You know, oh, I don't tell him that. That's what I think.
Yeah.
I started telling him that, but
Yeah.
then I just started reframing. I'm like, just don't break it because I
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
he's gonna touch. I've told him
Yeah.
so many times, don't touch, and he
Right.
will
Right.
always
Right.
touch. I'm like, just don't break it.
Yeah.
Just
There
be
we go.
careful.
Yeah. You can
And
touch
yeah,
gently.
some places you can't touch, but
Right. Right. Right.
you know,
Yeah.
when it's like Target or something, I'm like, just don't
Yeah.
break it. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Please.
it's yeah.
Please.
Yeah. But from what you know about like your human design and your astrology and then your strengths test, what do you see the commonalities between them?
Ah, well, what was really empowering for me, because for the longest time, like it was very unusual. Usually, if there's something I'm interested in, I want to learn it. Like that's just how I'm programmed. But astrology, like I never really wanted to learn until I started learning a little bit about human design in our manifestation course where we met.
Mm,
And then I'm like, it just got me all lit up. And I'm like, oh, well, then I feel like I need to know about astrology if I know about human design. But one of the great things, like, because I never remembered like rising sign or my moon. I just knew I was a Capricorn sun and that didn't seem right, you
hmm
know?
hmm
And I mean, I see some parts of the Capricorn sun, but like just not the stereotypical, maybe like my number one strength, but like Gemini rising just makes so much sense to me,
hmm
which goes along with my strengths, which you also have. Like we love learning and sharing, learning just for ourselves, but then there's also another strength about like learning and sharing. And I'm like, I feel like that's all connected. And my Mercury is in Sagittarius,
hmm
which also just seems to be all connected,
hmm
you know? And it's interesting because like in strengths, like I know you have your strategic thinking strengths are more aligned with like the overthinking and going super deep, which I
hmm
don't have, which is funny.
Yeah.
But I'm also not like a super like I do like to like play with things in my head, but I'm not an overthinker. Like my head is on the pillow and I'm out. Like I know
Yeah.
so many people who don't, and a lot of them have strategic thinking, like who are
hmm
just overthinking at
hmm
night. Um, and so I don't go super deep, but at the same time, I do have deep things in my chart. Like I think we're more consciously deep, like
Yeah.
in the 3D world. I'd love to
Yeah.
have deep conversations. I love to explore things, but then I can just let it go.
Yeah. Well,
So,
but that is the sun in the eighth because the eighth house
ah,
is ruled by
okay.
Scorpio, right? And then
Okay.
you have your moon in Scorpio, which we've talked about that
Yeah.
before. It's really interesting, but it's conjunct Neptune. So it makes sense that you wouldn't necessarily see it, right? Like
Um,
because you have Neptune there, kind of like, what do they call it? Pulling the wool over your eyes or whatever.
yeah. 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 Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think that natural that Capricorn in the eighth, or sorry, the sun in the eighth is going to bring a depth and intensity
Ah,
to like what you do. It sort of puts that twist on it. And this is why I
yeah.
love astrology and why it's like just taking one piece of it is so it like
Mhm.
does it a disservice. Cause I've heard a lot of people are like, I don't resonate with my sun like at all. And I
Right.
know
Right. Right.
people who are like Cancer suns, but you're like, really? You wouldn't know. But there's so much to it. It's like
Right.
the house that they're in, the placement, the aspects. Like it's just so fascinating. And also your sun is who you're growing into through the lessons of your
Right.
rising sign. So it makes sense that you would
Right.
connect with your rising first and foremost, right?
Yeah.
And then having that Mercury as your chart ruler because Mercury
Yeah.
rules Gemini, right? So it's like
Right.
you follow like those patterns and those
Yeah.
like rabbit holes, I guess, throughout your chart. And
Yeah.
then, and it's so interesting how that.
Well, and I feel like with all of the different platforms, modalities, whatever, like you can see it like, oh, this is my, if you only know your son and you're like, well, that's not me. Or you're
Mm,
reading like the daily horoscope that's for
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
You're like, whatever. Or you get your strengths report and you read it once and you're like, like then it's not going to help you change and grow. It's like it's in the depth and in the super understanding of it. That's where all the yumminess lies.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I learned that with everything, with astrology, human design. I'm still like I feel like dipping my toes in the water,
Hmm.
and I'm still mastering strengths. I mean, I've been working with it for a few years, but I just think
Yeah.
about like how much Eddie, my mentor, knows. Like
Hmm.
I love listening to him. He's
Yeah.
just like, oh, this. But much to his wife's dismay, after he first got his certification, he spent a year just doing free readings and free coaching.
Mm.
She's like, honey, time to start
Time
charging.
to charge. Yeah.
Time to make this into a
Yeah.
business. I think you've mastered it, but
Yeah.
and that's how he became this Jedi warrior of strengths. Like,
Mm.
he didn't just take the training and run with it. Like, he did a super, super deep dive. And he has just amazing, he has his own interpretations of it,
Hmm.
which make it super exciting because they're so connected and heartfelt. They're not corporate focused with that, mindset and that direction.
Hmm.
It's much bigger picture, I think,
Yeah.
which is why I also love it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. I think with any of these, there's so much depth to it that like you could study your entire life and not even scratch the surface of it. Like for sure, astrology, I feel like that. I'm like, I have been studying it for basically 6 years, and
Oh my
I'll listen to
gosh.
like somebody who's been in it 20, and I'm like, wait, do I actually know anything about astrology? Like, there's just so much to learn about it, And I think that's
Yeah.
why it's like choosing like one specific area that you want to like go down the route. Even in
Yeah.
human design, like for me, it's always kind of been body. So it's like that PHS, the physical health system, to me is
Yeah.
where I want to like pour more of my energy and like really learning, because it's like
Yeah.
that calls to me. And then astrology, psychological
Mm.
astrology, right? Because like there are
Yeah.
so many different avenues of astrology. It's crazy. And like medical
Yeah.
astrology, I tried to dip my toe in that for a minute. I was like, I would have to go back to school to like, because it's like a doctor's degree. It's like
I didn't even know there
it's
was
so
such a thing.
uh-huh. It's wild. Like, because I mean, you think about it just like on a surface level. I mean, every sign or every planet and sign rules a part of the house, right? So
Right.
house, part of the body. So like
Yeah.
Capricorn, right? It rules the bones.
Right.
And so it's in like the bones and the skin, because like every
Mhm.
time, like because I have Mars and Capricorn, so every time there's like a intense transit for me, I'll get like rashes, or it's crazy, right? So you can
Yeah.
actually see like the houses and the aspects and the placements. Like people will narrow it down so fine tuned to like what's happening in like organs of your body. It's wild. It's
Oh
like
my
Ayurveda.
gosh.
Yeah, but it's so much. Like I started studying Ayurveda too, and I got about a year into a program, and I was like, this is fascinating. But at the time,
So
I
big.
mean, working single mom, I was studying
Yeah.
astrology, human design. Like I just didn't have the bandwidth to like really dedicate as much time as it would have needed.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's fascinating. There's so much to
Yeah.
it. It's wild.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And I recently also learned in like the last couple of years, I think it was actually from Catherine from the manifestation program,
Hmm.
um, astrocartography.
Oh
And I'm
yeah.
like,
Yeah. Do you
and my
know
daughter and
where you're
I,
on? What line you're on?
well, see, I don't understand it. Like, I've seen the
Mm.
chart,
Hmm.
but I know, like, I don't know what the wavy lines are, but like
Okay.
both my daughter and I have wavy lines going through Sumbawa.
Okay. I'm gonna look it up. I'm gonna find out
Yeah.
for you.
Okay.
I find it
And
fascinating.
I was looking at it again recently, and I'm like, I really thought there would be more going through like Cusco because that's
Mm,
where my daughter was conceived. Like, this is where I
yeah.
was living when I got pregnant. And then I looked on a different chart and I like blew it up to see, and I'm like, there was like literally a star on Cusco. And I'm like, I don't
Mm,
know what that means, but that seems to be
yeah. That's fascinating. Here,
aligned.
I'm gonna add you in here. I don't have you in this specific
Yeah.
program.
So it's, Peru's such a skinny little country, but
Hmm.
it's in the Andes because like that's where
Okay.
people go from Cusco, they get to Machu Picchu.
I know, because
Not
I'm
too far
seeing
from,
like a circle around an area, and I'm wondering if that's Cusco. I see it. I see it.
yeah,
Yeah. So let's see where that is. That's on your Saturn line. So how old were you when you got pregnant?
35.
35. Okay, you were out of your Saturn return. So I'm like, I would be wild if that was your
Yeah.
Saturn return.
Oh yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
got
yeah, yeah.
pregnant.
No, I think that was my move to Japan was my Saturn
Mm.
return.
Okay. Well, that would make sense when you were telling the story. I was wondering
Yeah.
if that was because well, you have Saturn in the 10th house. You have Saturn in Pisces, um but yeah, no, that's so interesting. I mean, Saturn, I mean, it's lessons, it's karma, right? So if you like
Oh,
having a significant like event or something happen there,
yeah.
makes sense. And then let's see where you're living now, where that is. Bali, let's see. Oh my gosh, it keeps like zooming in on got it, I think.
Mm.
I found it. Okay.
Yay.
Woohoo.
Woohoo.
Okay, so it's on your Mercury Chiron line. So it's like there's an intersection there, which for
Okay.
you with a Gemini rising, Mercury rules
Mhm.
your chart. So that
Oh,
theoretically would feel good, right? Like being on your chart ruler. It literally the first sentence says this is a place for rational transcendence. So I don't know
oh.
if that resonates, but it says you communicate better than you ever have before. You absorb information, you think clearly and accurately. Your thoughts and intuition become powerful partners.
Mhm.
You're able to effectively communicate difficult and complex concepts, and your empathy gives others a feeling of confidence and trust. You feel as though you could read other people's minds. There is a suggestive and
Yeah.
magical power in your words, which is due to your thinking being guided not just by your logic, but also by your gut intuition. And then
Ooh,
Chiron is always going to bring in like a little bit of that wounding, you know? So there's going
right.
to be an element of that. But this, I mean, if we're just going by like paper, this
Yeah,
would
yeah, I know.
look like a pretty good place to live,
Mm.
like just according to, you know,
Yeah,
what rules it. Yeah, that's so
yeah.
interesting. All that
Well, because
around it.
my friends who like know me, they're like, "How are you surviving on this remote island? Like, we know
Yeah.
you."
Yeah.
And I'm like, really, a big part is that I do work online. Like, if I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't online or wasn't like having accountability partners, having at least one daily good, deep connection,
Mm-hmm.
because here this is a surfing area. Like sometimes you
Yeah.
meet really cool, insightful surfers, but a lot of times they're, no diss to the surfers, just a
Yeah.
different energy,
Yeah.
right? And I love meeting people and I can do small talk. I can do all of it,
Mm-hmm.
So it's fine for me, but having those deep connections daily and also like really for the first time having more time to myself,
Mm-hmm.
like which I never wanted when I was younger. And as I get
Mm-hmm.
older, it shifts, but I'm always going to go towards the people. If there's a chance to connect, I'm there,
Yeah.
which is interesting because I see it in my charts, all of my charts. I see it in my strengths. There's kind of two strengths connected to people. And one is called woo, which actually
Mm-hmm.
means win others over. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't so strongly, I think when I was younger, for sure, and more in my ego, I wanted to be everyone's friend. But now I'm
Yeah.
like, this is it, take it or leave it,
Yeah.
But I'll still like, I love connecting with people. They can like me, they can not like me. I don't really care. I'm not attached to it as much
Mm-hmm.
because I know I have more than enough friends, more than enough connections, and it's always fun to add. But I
Yeah.
also have the one that you have, which is relator.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't typically embody that because I have the woo, like it's my number two strength. I have that
Okay.
much stronger. And my relator is like my seven. And so I love going deep and I love one-on-ones, but I can also be in a group and be fine as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
I can go either way, but I'm just not so closed in my circle,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm okay with small talk. Like there's those differences,
Yeah.
but I think it's also just getting older. My energy, I have like, I also in my 20s, as you mentioned your 20s before, like I was the
Mm-hmm.
party girl in my 20s,
Oh yeah.
you know. And people who know me now, they're like, do you eat meat? Do you drink? Like everyone thinks I'm a
Yeah.
vegetarian or vegan,
Yeah.
and which is fine if you are,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not. I'm like, but I've almost always eaten mostly plant-based diet,
Yeah.
but I eat a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But people are like, oh, well, we just know you as healthy. And I'm like, "Oh, I used to be. And now, even if there's a live band, I am dancing like crazy. And people think I'm like drunk. And
Yeah.
I don't know, this is just the wild party Tracy coming out that you don't ever see because there's no opportunity for her to come
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
most of the time.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah. I mean, if you like the people who knew me in my 20s and if they
Yeah,
like came across me now would like not like night and day.
yeah,
Just because,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, the same thing, party girl. I
yeah,
think I did it not because, not for like being the center of attention, but like to feel like I like fit in. I think because I've always
yeah.
had this like underlying depth and intensity and like
Mm,
wanting to go deep and I've just never felt like I could connect with people unless I was drinking
mm.
because then
Yeah,
it's almost more acceptable to like have that
yeah,
one intense night. And I'm not talking like sexually, but like just
yeah, yeah,
intellectually, right? Or like
yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah,
People
yeah,
are more interested in like astrology or like
yeah.
the world or the universe when they've had a few drinks, right? And then it's like the next
Right.
day and they're just like, oh, wait, did I just bare my soul to that person? I can't talk to him today, you know? But like, but like now, I mean, now I'm not drinking currently, like off and on. I
Yeah,
mean, I've been vegan since my daughter was
yeah.
born basically. So that's been like
Wow.
15 years. So that hasn't changed. But I mean, I used to smoke cigarettes for like 12 years, drinking,
Oh
drugs, all
yeah,
the things. It's crazy. And
yeah,
it's like
yep,
now it's so
yep.
much more intentional. And I
Of
do think
course.
that, going through those experiences, it's for a reason. And I don't
Right.
regret any of it. Like it
Exactly.
was a lot of fun, like
Yeah,
I traveled the world and I
yeah.
partied in all the cities
Same.
that I was in. So,
Yep.
it is what it is. And I mean, it was a great time, but
Yeah.
it's just
Same.
different.
Same.
I
Yeah.
value those experiences and I also value the connection with myself that I have now, right? And the depth of the relationships.
Yeah.
Now, when I go deep with people, it's not because I'm trying to hide something or,
Right.
I can be honest about who I am and have those conversations. And I know that in the setting normally now that I meet people and have those, it's not a bar, so it's a little
Yeah.
bit more
Yeah.
authentic.
Yeah. Well,
But
and that's also the beauty of all of these things, strengths,
mhm,
astrology, human design,
mhm,
is that like I would have said before my strengths assessment, like I'm a very confident person. I know I'm confident, I'm capable, I'm blah, 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 blah. But also one of my strengths, self-assurance, like a deep knowing in the self. It's my 11 to 14, 15, but I really resonate with it. But I know, like without a shadow of a doubt, understanding myself more through strengths, through astrology, through all of these things make me even more confident,
mm,
A, but B, they also give me the words to simply describe myself or what I'm doing or what I'm not doing and understanding it and not like shaming myself for not doing all of that behind the scenes work that just sucks all of my energy out.
yeah,
You know, it's so powerful. And I think actually it would be great for like a job interview. Like, not that I'm never getting a job. It's been a long, long time since I've had one of those.
yeah,
But like, or just describing, who you are or what you do. It's like, well, I am really great at like learning information and sharing it with people, helping
mm,
people go from good to better, better to best. And I'm like, that's my number five and my number one. No wonder I love teaching and coaching and
yeah,
mentoring.
yeah.
Like, it's all right there.
Hmm. Yeah, I think like all these things give you such good like verbiage to use
Yeah.
in like different situations. And it's also learning like I had a hard time um articulating or talking about it without being like, well, Mars does this, right? So like now I've gotten to the point where I can just be like, your attraction or the way that you use your energy. And it's taken a while to like get there, but I also think that's like a
Yeah.
beautiful thing to be able to use that in conversation. And also when you know somebody, like I would imagine if you know someone's strengths or like for me knowing my kids' astrologies and or anybody, because I have so
Yeah.
many charts in my thing, like I can like talk
Right.
to them about their chart without talking to them about their chart, and they're
Right.
just like, oh yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I see it.
Well, and even if you don't have their chart, right? When
Hmm.
you know enough, you can start to
Yeah.
see
You pick
things
out the
or
little words that they
guess.
use, like the
Yeah.
keywords, like it's crazy. It's so
Yeah.
so many times in like podcast interviews or just like being out and around town, like I hear people
Yeah.
say things and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I bet you they're this, or I bet like even astrology, I bet you they're Virgo or something. And then we'll
Yeah.
pull their chart and I'm like, I knew it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's the same. It's the same with
Mhm.
strengths, right? Like
Mhm.
it's all of them. And now I'm starting to play with those ideas with astrology. And
Yeah.
then I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, do you want to give me your birthday? Do you know your birth time? I'm like
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
just starting to play, but I'm starting to guess and see it's
Yeah.
fun, right? Like it's fun, but it also gives you like not only knowing yourself, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
know enough, and I mean, really, like I said, I'm the baby in astrology and what I know, but I can still start to see things and I'm
Mm-hmm.
starting to guess. And it just gives me like more understanding, more compassion, that continual reminder that we're all doing it our own way,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. She's struggling with this because she's a relationship builder and she's not an executor, or she's an executor. We had somebody actually on our team here in this project that I'm living in and working with in Sumbawa, and one of our Indonesian staff, one of the girls, she was because we did their strengths. She was more an influencer, but not a relationship builder. And so they were having problems because she was managing a team on like a construction site. And she's this like teeny tiny, like maybe 5 foot, if she is, like little Indonesian woman bossing around all these guys. But she would just be like, "Bah, bah, 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 bah." She
Mm-hmm.
didn't maintaining a relationship wasn't important to her.
Yeah.
Hers was to move them forward to get the job done.
Mm-hmm.
But it was becoming, and I heard this from like the founder of the project. He first told me about it. And I looked at her strengths and I'm like, well, this makes a lot of sense. She's not a relationship builder. So that's not where her energy is focused. Her energy is focused on getting the stuff done. And it's helping them. She knows they're here and they need to get here to finish their job. Her
Mm-hmm.
only focus is this,
Yeah.
but then we had to kind of do a little work on like, hey, let's look at how we're saying these words. Let's look
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
what would be more effective,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But
Yeah.
it's fun and it's fascinating. But at first, when this guy was complaining about her, and I'm like, oh no, that makes so much sense. She's not a relationship builder.
Yeah.
And the relationship builder would be the opposite. They would care more about the relationship than getting the thing done.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a
Mm-hmm.
challenge in that as well,
Yeah.
unless you're both a relationship builder and an influencer, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think like so often, and I just had a massive Uranus transit over my sun. So I'm
Mm,
in this phase where I'm just like, I refuse to fit into a box that is not made for me anymore. Because so often, in the corporate world, and I look at like job postings and listings and things like that, and it's like I know my strengths and I know my weaknesses. And to be in a position that's constantly having you face your weaknesses, and it's like, why wouldn't I just focus on what I'm good at? Instead of like being in this
yeah,
position where I constantly have to see things that I have to work on, right? And it's like, yeah,
right.
like job listings, it's always like they always want all of these qualities where it's like, okay, so
Yeah.
you basically want like a triple Virgo with some Capricorn in there. Like that's not reality to like what people can offer. So it's just interesting because everything's like organized, analytical, like super oriented, detail oriented, and this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, okay, but what about like creative and passionate and like, yeah, relationship building and
Yeah,
there's all these other things that we're not focusing on, I think, or
yeah,
it forces us in a lot of situations to focus on the things that we don't have. And we're always trying to
yeah,
fill that instead of
yeah,
just focusing on the things that we're really, really good at.
yeah.
And so that's sort of the
That
point
light
that
us
I've
up.
gotten, yeah, in my
Yeah.
in my world where I'm like, I want to lean into the things that, and
Mm,
especially as a generator, like I want to go to bed feeling so satisfied and just like
yeah.
today meant something. I did something that lit me
Mm,
up. And the
yeah.
last job I had, I was
Yeah.
coming home crying and feeling less than. And I was like, I don't want to, no job is worth this to me,
No,
and
no.
so I think that it's so important to like reframe what success means to you, because like it actually doesn't have to mean what society says you need to make millions of
Yeah.
dollars and own a Lamborghini and like all these things. Like I could care less. I just want to be able to travel, eat
Yeah.
good food, and like have a career and or a business that like truly lights me up. Like the last couple weeks I've been going to bed just like, oh, like this is it. I'm so on purpose now, and that's like the best feeling ever. But that's where I think all these tools are so beautiful to come in to
Yeah.
help us, even with the strengths. Like there were things that you told me in those sessions where I was like, oh, like, okay, I can focus on these and like let go of the
Mm,
other stuff because I'm not that person.
yeah.
Like those aren't where my gifts and strengths lie. And so
Yeah.
that's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. And I've been talking about it, on social media and like on podcast interviews and stuff like that. Cause it's like, why are we so focused on what we don't have? People, I feel like we don't see our own gifts because they're so innate within us that we don't even recognize it, and we're always like, well, that person has this and that person has that. But then that person's probably like, well, wow, look at how good you are at this. Like, I don't have that. And it's like, why don't we just stay in our own or even recognize our own, you know, world? I don't know. It,
I 100% hear you. I think, and I do think it's so true. I mean, I was guilty of that as well. Like,
mm-hmm,
because these things come so naturally to you, you
mm-hmm,
don't always see it as a gift. Like, I used to
yeah,
be like, that's just who I am. That's just
yeah,
how I am. Like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just being
mm-hmm,
me. And it was really when I started teaching, actually, when I moved to Japan, well, no, even before Japan, I was teaching English as a second language, but still do it online because I just love connecting with new people around the world and learning about
mm-hmm,
them and their culture. And I love teaching. So I still do that a little bit now online. And then also then when I started working with clients, like they started giving me feedback that I would never, things I wouldn't know about myself. Like, oh, I feel so good after a class with you. Like I almost going to cancel because I wasn't in the mood, but I knew I'd feel better at the end. And I'm like, really? I'm not doing anything. Or
yeah,
they'd be like, oh, your class, we always have so much to talk about. And some teachers, they're like, it's just silent sometimes, or it's really awkward. And I'm like, I don't even understand that sentence because like never, you
yeah,
know. And I kept getting feedback from people, but like even in my strengths, my number three strength is positivity. And yeah, it's about being positive, but it's also about being very enthusiastic, which I just have always been. I'm like, that's a strength. What?
mm,
What? But that's a strength that is a relationship building strength that has influencing undertones,
mm,
right? Because then people will leave a conversation, a class, as whatever, feeling better, feeling more inspired. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's my positivity. I didn't even know that was a strength. Like,
mm-hmm,
you're just being you. And it is hard to see, and
yeah,
if I hadn't been in these roles where I was getting feedback, I'd still be like, what?
yeah. Yeah, I know. I've had that a lot where people will reflect things or say something, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't realize I was doing that, or I didn't
Doing
realize
that.
that
Yeah,
that
yeah,
was something that was
yeah.
valued. Just I was
Right.
just
Or
being
like that
me.
everyone doesn't do
Yeah,
it.
exactly. Yeah, and
Well,
when
I was just going to say what I'm noticing now since I've really been, doing this deep dive in strengths for the last few years is almost every compliment I get now is connected to my top strengths.
hmm,
Like, and I'm like, oh, of course. Now I'm like, oh, I'm of course very grateful, like any
yeah,
compliment, but I see it now. I'm like, oh, I was getting those before, but I didn't
mm,
understand that those are actually my strengths.
yeah,
And then I get even more excited because I'm like, oh, I must be aligned. They're
yeah,
seeing the alignment.
yeah. I love that. So, where can people, because I'm sure now they're going to want to learn more about this. So, where can they learn more? And then where can they connect with you, have a session with you? What offerings do you
Yeah.
have? If you want to just let
Yeah.
people
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I'm still working on mapping out 2025.
know.
Um, one of my strengths is like it's my 11, which I don't super resonate. It's called focus. And it's like
Mm,
loving to plan and organize, which I'd love to map it out. But then the second part of that strength is doing it and implementing. And that is where
mm.
I can't choose that as one to add to my top 10. But I do like the planning and processing. I'm in process. Maybe I'm going off the Chinese New Year, right? Which is still coming.
Yeah. The
Um,
astrological new year. That's
or
on
the
its way too.
astrological, right? The astrological
Yeah.
new year. But I will be offering sometime this quarter, actually my first group coaching program for strengths. So
Mm,
right now I have just like a wait list option. And it's going to be cheap because it's the first time I'm doing it. It's very affordable. It'll be over 3 months. Like the first 2 months, we'll go super deep. We'll do the top 10, bottom five, look at the 11 to 15. And then the last month will be more coaching on it and really connecting people or any, questions, really getting people to embody their strengths and see how they can use them intentionally in their life, which is super fun and exciting.
Yeah.
So that will be sometime this quarter. But as I said, I do have a wait list for that. And you can find me my website is theholisticshebang.com. Thank my niece for that fun name. And that's also my Instagram, which is where I am at, me and social media. We're still trying to figure it out,
Yeah.
but I'm there
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you so much. It's been so fun to dive into this. And yeah,
Thank you for having
of
me. It is
course.
always a pleasure to connect.
Mhm. Always.